Welcome to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary.
After a mission lasting more than 12.5 years, the European Space Agency's Rosetta probe is now on its final orbital trajectory. Its flight path will send it on a suicidal death plunge onto the surface of comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko on September 30. Rosetta made history on August 6, 2014, when it became the first spacecraft to achieve orbit insertion around a comet. The historic accomplishment followed a mammoth 10-year journey to reach the 5-kilometre-wide multi-lobe mountain of rock and ice, known as Comet 67P, as it travelled on its eternal 6-year orbit between Jupiter and the Sun. History was made again on November 11, 2014, when Rosetta deployed its Philae lander to touch down on the comet's surface. But things didn't go quite to plan, with the tiny lander's push engine and grappling hooks failing to anchor Philae onto the comet's frozen surface. Instead of a secure touchdown, Philae bounced across the comet's wild, tortured landscape for over 2 hours, before finally coming to rest on its side in a dark shaded crevice with at least one of its legs in the air. Meanwhile, after orbiting the comet for some 2 years, and returning an unprecedented wealth of scientific information during 67P's closest approach to the Sun, Rosetta and the comet are now heading back out beyond the orbit of Jupiter. Travelling further from the Sun than ever before, and faced with what will be a significant reduction in solar power, Rosetta's destiny is to undergo a controlled descent onto the comet's surface. The final hours of this descent will enable Rosetta to make many once-in-a-lifetime measurements, including analysing gas and dust closer to the surface than ever previously possible, and taking very high-resolution images of the comet's nucleus, including the open pits of the Murat region, where the spacecraft's expected to make its controlled impact. Just a few days ago, on September the 24th, Rosetta moved from its flyover orbit and transferred to a 16-kilometre by 23-kilometre orbit designed to prepare and line up the spacecraft for its final descent. Then, on the evening of September the 29th, at 2050 GMT, Rosetta will manoeuvre into its final collision course with the comet, beginning the descent from an altitude of 19 kilometres. The spacecraft will then freefall without further manoeuvres, collecting scientific data during its final descent. That descent will culminate with impact in a region of active pits on the comet's smaller lobe from which jets of cometary material spew into space, helping to form the comet's spectacular coma and tails. The Murat region is home to several active pits more than 100 metres in diameter and up to 60 metres deep. The walls of these pits have intrigued scientists for years. They contain metre-sized lumpy structures which have been nicknamed goosebumps, and which scientists believe could well be the signatures of cometesimals, the early building blocks that assembled to create the comet in the early phases of the solar system's formation. Rosetta will get its closest look yet at these fascinating structures on September 30, its last day of life, as the spacecraft will target a potential impact point adjacent to a 130-metre wide well-defined pit which mission managers have named Deir el-Medina, after a structure with a similar appearance in an ancient Egyptian town with the same name. Just like the archaeological artefacts found inside the Egyptian pit, which is telling historians about the life of the ancient pharaonic town, the comet's pit contains clues to the geological history of 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko. Rosetta will target a point very close to Deir el-Medina within an ellipse of about 700 by 500 metres. Since August the 9th, Rosetta has been flying elliptical orbits that bring it progressively closer and closer to the comet. On its closest flyby, it may come to within 1 kilometre of the surface, far closer than ever before. Mission managers say the probe's already feeling the difference in the gravitational pull of the comet as it flies closer and closer. And that's increasing the spacecraft's orbital period, which now has to be corrected by almost constant small manoeuvres. The impact is expected to occur within 20 minutes of 10:40 Greenwich Mean Time on September the 30th, with the only uncertainties linked to the exact trajectory of Rosetta on the day and the influence of gravity close to the comet. Now, taking into account the additional 40-minute signal travel time between Rosetta and the Earth, it means that confirmation of impact Consequently, the final death certificate can be expected at ESA's Mission Control in Darmstadt, Germany, within 20 minutes of 11:20 Greenwich Mean Time. Mirroring Rosetta's wake-up from deep space hibernation in January 2014, where the rising peak at the right frequency confirmed the spacecraft was alive and transmitting its carrier signal, mission managers will see that peak disappear for a final time once Rosetta impacts, the sounding of its death knell, not with a scream, but with a whimper. It'll not be possible to retrieve any data after this time.